3,000 Spanish villages are uninhabited. How many homes could that possibly be? 3,000 villages? That's got to be like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of homes, right? All right, welcome back, you guys. Thanks for hopping in here with me today. Today we're checking out a video from Spain, unfiltered. I drove deep into empty Spain. Now, I haven't heard of this before. I would imagine, I mean, we have some areas too that are kind of like, if you go into parts of Detroit where they used to be like vibrant suburbs are now completely empty or just ridden with crime and homelessness maybe, but completely uninhabited. I don't think we have too many areas like that here in the US. I'm sure we do if I looked it up, but 3,000 villages. I'm really curious about this video. I have no idea what we're getting into. Haven't done a video out of Spain in a while, so I'm pumped for this. Smash like button and let's dive in.
We hear a lot of talk about Spain's overheating cities, tourism, traffic and overcrowding. But there's another Spain, and it's moving in the opposite direction. To find out more about abandoned Spain, I drove deep into a region that rarely sees outsiders. And what I thought would be a story about economics turned into something unexpectedly human. I discovered a story that begins with a dictator and decades of rural decline and ends with a lesson that reaches far beyond these empty valleys, back to every community, abandoned or not. Spain's depopulation crisis didn't start by accident. In the 1940s, Franco was still consolidating power. Armed anti-Franco guerrillas operated from Spain's remote mountain regions where state control was weakest. While there was no single national policy of forced depopulation, the region increasingly favoured concentrating people into towns and cities. The result was a countryside that became easy to monitor and gradually emptied. By the 1950s, Spain entered a phase of economic revival. As the Mediterranean coast was being reimagined as a future tourism magnet, the interior became the canvas for Franco's industrial vision. Massive state-funded dam projects promised water management and cheap hydroelectric power. Extremadura, home to the Tejo and Guadiana rivers, was a prime target.
Every time I see one of these things, I always just want to slide down it. There's like an urge in me that's like, I want to put a little bit of water down. I want to slide down that.
Extremadura, home to the Tejo and Guadiana rivers, was a prime target. Today, the region is dotted with reservoirs, peaceful and beautiful, but hiding the remains of entire communities which were forcefully uprooted. On the banks of the Gabriel and Galan reservoir, the walled village of Granadilla still stands, evacuated to make way for water that never actually reached it. Even today, the descendants of the former residents are not allowed to return. But forced relocations like Granadilla were the tip of the iceberg. As resources were directed towards cities and infrastructure and transportation links centred around them, urban economies grew quickly, while rural economies fell behind. A wealth gap was seeded that for decade after decade has only grown wider. So back in June, I drove through Extremadura with an old friend. As we explored town after town, a pattern became impossible to ignore. Streets that should have been bustling in the mid-morning were quiet. Shops were shuttered, and almost everybody we saw was elderly. We ended that trip just as the summer heatwave arrived, but what I had seen had sparked my interest. Depopulation was pushing Extremadura to the edge, but there are areas of Spain that had already been pushed over the edge. I wanted to see España Vaciada. So in October, I set off again, this time following the coast north past Alicante, past Benidorm, before turning inland towards the mountains that divide Valencia from Aragon. The further I drove, the quieter everything became. And then It's
so wild how much Spain looks like Southern California. It's almost identical. It's so crazy.
Border, the road simply changed. Smooth tarmac turned into a rough cinder track, twisting deeper into the hills. It felt like crossing an invisible line between the Spain that most people know and a Spain that's slowly slipping from living memory. I was heading for La Estrella, a tiny village on the edge of Aragon that I'd heard about for years, but even with maps, GPS and planning, I still managed to get completely lost. After doubling back through the valley and skirting round to the other side of the mountains, I finally found the right track, and I arrived in La Estrella 4 hours later than I scheduled. After wandering around a little, I filmed a short piece to camera, and, well, honestly, it captures my reaction better than anything I could script.
I'm kind of lost for words for this place, you know. Travelled a long time to get here because I looked online, I'd heard about the place. It became quite a famous kind of YouTube destination amongst the Spanish kind of YouTube community. But it's not quite what I expected. I expected a typical rundown, abandoned Spanish village with kind of, you know, collapsing properties and this, that and the other. But to come here, it's not just some poor little agricultural village which went wrong. I mean, the church behind me is absolutely gorgeous. There's an incredible villa which looks like it was built in the 18th century. It's a really beautiful, wonderful place to be, and it's quite scary.
I was going to say eerie. It feels very eerie, right?
Wonderful place to be, and it's quite scary that it can be so quiet. You know, it's quite eerie to be here and to think, you know, this used to be a thriving little square. There've been people from all around the area coming to church in the morning.
The buildings look beautiful too.
There's a couple of people around who are doing some work on houses, which I assume they're going to have as weekend houses. And it's good to see that there's some solar panels on top of some of the roofs I've noticed, and a satellite dish here and there. So there obviously are some of the properties being used for weekends and the.
You know what? Now that I think about this, we've talked about this before, but for me, especially somebody who's like all over Europe, especially online, I get fed those ads all the time. That's like, buy a home in Italy or buy a home in Portugal or Spain for $1 or buy a home for $100. This now explains it, especially with what he went through with the move to the coastal cities, the depopulation. Now it makes sense. I always wondered, I was like, well, how do you buy a home in Italy or Spain for $1? Like, why would they even allow that? Well, because they're just empty. I had no idea. I mean, I don't know Italy's situation. It might be completely different, so don't quote me on that. But Spain's, yeah, it's crazy.
It is a ghost town.
What makes La Estrella even more striking is how recent this abandonment really is. Until about a year ago, two people still lived here, Sinforosa and Martin, an elderly couple who'd been the last permanent residents for 30 years. They even became quite famous, featuring in a Land Rover commercial, but in their 80s with declining health, they had no choice but to leave. Martin's old Land Rover still sits where he parked it. A quiet reminder that life here wasn't ancient or distant.
Honestly, I feel like I would like it a little bit if you were just there with your spouse, especially in your older years, and it was like super quiet. I would imagine you would have probably no like internet. You know, you're just out there in the bush, just all by yourself. It would probably be a little rewarding, but also I see why they had to leave. They got a little old. They probably needed medical help.
It was happening until very recently. But as haunting and as beautiful as this place is, I can't understand why nobody lives here now. La Estrella isn't just remote, it's inaccessible. The road I took wasn't a scenic back route, it was the route. There are no shops, no school, no doctor, no public transport. Buying groceries would mean hours of driving. Seeing a doctor would take an entire day. In winter, with snow on these tracks, and it does snow here, access would be impossible. So life here might seem romantic, but it would be hard. Estrella and the remote villages like it ask for more than most people can give. In the vast mountainous landscapes of Spain, is it even reasonable to expect that villages like this would survive in the modern world? In the morning, I set off even deeper into the most sparsely populated region of Spain. I'd been invited to a village called Sardinago, where I'd heard that they were taking a very modern approach to keeping their community on the map. My route took me through Aragon, past Zaragoza and deep into Castilla y Leon. As I let the video give you an idea of the scale of these open spaces, I want to say a big thank you for the response to my last video, especially if you're one of the thousands who subscribed or left a comment. I started off trying to respond to everybody, then just trying to read them all, but it becomes really hard to keep track of what I have and haven't seen, and well, that's a real shame because many of those comments were long, thoughtful and deserved my response. So
yeah, I'm gonna reiterate what he said there. It's literally impossible, you guys. I get like thousands of comments every day. I try and go through them and respond to you guys as much as possible, but it's nearly impossible. I do see a lot of them. I just can't respond to every single
I've
one.
set up a member space for people who want to go that bit deeper. You'll get early access to new videos. I'll post videos discussing the points that came up in comments. I'll share footage that doesn't make the final cut and some of my research, like this route, for example. I'd love to meet you there, so please do follow the QR code that's up now or the link in the description if it's something you think you'd like to be part of. Anyway, back to the story. By the time I arrived in Sardinago, it was gone midday. I've been invited to visit on this particular day because something special was happening.
Some people here.
Marcos was waiting for me when I arrived. He's an architect and responsible for the design of Sardinago's co-living space. He gave me a tour of the village. We started at the old communal laundry, which has now been converted into an open-air library. Then the ruined church, where Marcos told me that his uncle had narrowly been missed when the bell fell from the tower. Today, it's been preserved in the village museum, not as a relic, but as part of a story that's still being told. They hope that one day they'll be able to return it to its rightful position. Then Marcos took me to see their flagship project, a co-living space designed by him and being built by the Amigos de Sardinago, the group of former residents and their descendants who've looked after this village since 1980.
The ground floor is a huge space, a social area with restaurant, small bar, and a big social area to work or co-working. And in the second floor, hostel with small rooms with pumps and a social area with kitchen and living room. And we are in digital nomads or, for example, companies that want to do some team building. They come here, live, work, do some activities in this environment like bike, trekking, cycling, running, trail, what they want.
And then he introduced me to a word that
would
I've
be a
never
nice little
heard
retreat
before.
for your work.
Hacenderas in Spanish.
Hacenderas.
Hacenderas. I think it's not a word.
Hacenderas.
It's like we are from Sardinago and we say, okay, the 3rd of October, we come back to Sardinago this weekend and we work.
And people have to come from a long way away, I assume.
Yeah, of course. It's mainly from this close area. It's like Soria, Logroño, Tudela, Pamplona, Zaragoza is 2 hours away, mostly. As for example, people from the south, people from Barcelona, people from Galicia. The plan is we start working at 8, we stop at 10 to get some food, lunch, and now at 2 or 3 we get the lunch.
Very hard work, though. It looks like hard
Yeah, it does look like hard work.
And of course there are people here working, but there are a lot of people in the kitchen doing the lunch, doing a lot of things.
There is nothing like when you're doing hard physical labor and then like sitting down for a meal on a break while you're doing that work. I miss that. Honestly, it sounds rough, but there's like something so rewarding, like working your ass off and then just like sitting down and eating a nice meal.
If not in the other part of the Sardinago, cutting the grass or...
Of course. So there's maintenance that he's doing as well as was,
This front, they call this Hacendera, but it's really typical in this zona. It's not just Sardinago thing, we didn't invent it.
No.
It's from there. They have a lot of names, but it's always say, we live here, we want it to be good, just work.
Brilliant. There's a proper community spirit, we'd say in England, but it's not something you see in big towns. Only in small places.
The co-working hub that they're building is being funded entirely by donations. Marcos couldn't tell me when it would be finished. They started 4 years ago. It may take many more, but, well, somehow that didn't seem to matter. Then we went to see some more of the work that the community had already completed. Marcos showed me the old school building,
Dang, they've
now
been
a
hard at
communal
work.
space and museum. The walls were covered in photographs, former residents, school children, teachers, faces frozen in time, but not forgotten. Upstairs, the village museum told yet another story. Fiestas that had been revived after years of silence. Traditional dress, unique to the area, with Sardinago's own colours, still used in village fiestas, which are believed to date back nearly 2,000 years to the Celtic origins of this region, the Serrania Celtiberica.
I just love seeing other cultures. It is so cool. I'm such a nerd about this stuff. I don't know. I don't know where I got it from, but it's like, it's amazing.
Everyday objects show just how hard and simple life here once was. A reminder that this was never an easy place to live, even in its prime. That afternoon, I was invited to join everybody for lunch. A meat stew cooked slowly over an open fire, served in generous
Probably
portions
amazing.
with equally generous
yeah.
helpings of local wine and cider. As the village settled into a quiet afternoon calm, I had a wander around. The last permanent residents here had died in 1979, over 45 years before Sinforosa and Martin had left La Estrella. And yet, despite the ruined buildings, in stark contrast to Estrella's villas and church, even in the silence of siesta time, the atmosphere in Sardinago felt totally different. And it wasn't until the next day that I really understood why. Now, before I move on, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Marcos, Jose Marie, and everybody who made me so welcome in Sardinago. There is much more info about Sardinago in the members area, including the full interview and tour of the village with Marcos, and loads of footage that it pained me to leave out. If you'd like to help support their project or pay them a visit, there's a link in the description below explaining just how you can do that.
All right,
The next morning, after saying my goodbyes, I headed deeper into the surrounding mountains. There were two more abandoned villages I wanted to see. I had no map. I'd just been pointed in the rough direction, and well, when I finally found those villages, I understood something that I hadn't before. Until then, I hadn't really seen true abandonment. In Extremadura, there were still people living their lives. In La Estrella, the preserved church, Martin's Land Rover, cats, and recent memories in the air, even if it was tinged with sadness. In Sardinago, there was constant return, cherished history, and a clear vision of the future. But here, buildings had collapsed completely. Paths were overgrown. There was no sign that anybody other than hikers had set foot here for years. But electrical fittings still clung to the walls, a sign that these villages had been alive not so long ago. My trip through Extremadura in the summer had shown me that structural investment is needed to reverse that region's fortunes. And, well, on this trip, I'd seen what would happen if that decline fell beyond the point of no return. As sad as it is to see a village like La Estrella lying empty, it is unreasonable to expect that the investment that would be needed to link such places with the modern world could be justified. When I was heading towards Sardinago, I was expecting to find a town that, through technology and modern working practices, was aiming to reverse its fortunes and justify its existence in the modern world. But surrounded by these ruins, I realised that I'd missed the point completely. Marcus's words came back to me.
Because when you come back, you at least keep it alive.
Look at how.
And then I
look at
remembered
that,
something Jose Marie, one of the driving forces behind the Amigos de Sardinago, had said over lunch the day before. A village isn't abandoned until it's forgotten. Until then, it's just depopulated. Now, Marcos couldn't tell me when the co-working hub would be finished, and I don't think finishing it is the most important thing. You see, what matters is those hacenderas, the coming together, the shared work, the meals around those tables, not just remembering Sardinago, but continuing to make memories there and looking to a future that, by welcoming people in, stops the past from being forgotten. Depopulation strikes straight to the heart of Spain's identity. And maybe it's the hacenderas, a concept so Spanish
what a
that it
view,
has
man. Holy, hold on. I gotta pause really quick and look at that view.
And maybe it's the hacendera.
Wow. That is absolutely gorgeous. Oh, I want to see that in person.
A concept so Spanish that it has no direct English translation that will stop that identity itself from being abandoned. Now, I plan to explore more of Spain's depopulated regions. I still have a lot to learn, but I do feel that thanks to Sardinago, I now understand that this isn't about numbers or structures. It's about history, culture, and above all, people. Now, I wouldn't have been able to make this video if I couldn't speak Spanish. If you'd like some excellent tips on
All right, I've said this 1,000 times. You know when I'm not talking a lot, I'm really into the video. That was an amazing watch. That was really, really good. Appreciate that, you guys. Thank you for recommending that to me. All right, I'm getting out of here. I kind of want to go see this. There's too much. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.